All right, Oz, should we be doing this show at all? Is this podcast creating evil in the world?
Evil is maybe a bit of a stretch, but look, the reason I did not want to do this podcast originally was because I do feel like a lot of people listen to podcasts, not along, and give themselves a sense, a belief that they're actually working towards their goals. And I didn't want to be something out there to be like a proxy for people's real goals.
Mhm.
Like they think that actually they're getting better as a programmer by listening to a podcast about programming when really it's just entertainment. Like really, there's very little of value in what we're doing, Charlie. I'm sorry. Other than entertainment, which
Thank
okay,
you.
you can have some of that in your life. Like I'm not saying be a boring person, but and maybe this is better than playing Zelda or watching Succession or whatever.
Yeah,
These
well,
are things that people have done.
you're hitting it pretty close to home. I just paused the final episode. When this micro episode with you is over, I'm going right back to it, and I do feel guilty. I feel guilty about watching it. That's why they're called guilty pleasures, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, how's your book going?
Well, you ask, and I had a here's some notes that I took with a one-on-one tutor that I had
Oh
my
wow.
first session with today.
Oh
So
wow.
I'm doing shit. I am,
You've got a tutor for writing. That's cool. I didn't know that that was a thing.
yeah. And the way I sort of thought about it was one, you've talked to me a lot about tutoring and the value of it. And that resonated with me. And two, I also thought about it as a personal trainer. So people who want to achieve a goal in the gym, they can try to do it themselves. They can try to be their own accountability buddy, get a friend, go to a class. Probably the best thing is a one-on-one tutor. And since this is something I care about, I found someone who recommended it, and I just went for it and had the first session a day. And she tore my shit apart, and it was great.
So she's like an editor, or what does a writing tutor do for you?
Well, I don't fully know, but this session was I sent a handful. I have a manuscript that I've written, and I've sent a handful of pages, the first 30 or so, a synopsis of the book, my a list of questions and insecurities that, of course, I had, and she was able to work through these and ask a bunch of questions, which is like, why would this character do this? What is the motivation? And it's like, yeah, you're right. There are like literally so many logical inconsistencies. And she said, you've got ton of ideas. They're all these puzzle pieces, but they're almost the way that you've motivated it is that you haven't motivated it. And they're almost like puzzle pieces from six different board games.
Can
Uh,
she do code as well, or just prose?
so we're talking a little bit about that because my book is incorporating coding into it, and we haven't gotten to that chapter, and I'm concerned that she's going to say just strip all that out, and that's going to be painful, and I hope I don't have to do that.
Hey Charlie, am I a green rectangle right now?
No, but you're frozen and smiling. I guess Starlink has been problematic.
Yeah, I'm guessing this is something else, but
Okay,
let me give it a shot.
try to fight through it because you froze in it's a very nice smile.
Should you make it audio only for the rest?
We could, yeah, I could also freeze and not do anything, but I'll take a water break. So
You
what are
have a
you
little.
doing? What are you doing to debug right now?
Oh, I'm just gonna unplug a USB. I got a USB hub thing, which of course
Yeah.
doesn't work.
Okay. But you did get Starlink recently, right? That's a new thing for you.
It is.
Okay. Okay, now you're small. It's the OG Oz picture right there. Bradfield CS. I recognize. Okay,
How's
you're
that?
back. You're back.
USB hubs. Never. Not even once.
Yeah. But they just don't put enough holes in the side. It's
That is also true.
yeah. Okay, so yeah, the writing coach. I did it. I feel good about it, and we're gonna have another session in 2 weeks. And I have some stuff to come back and think about, which it feels good. It feels good to just have a sounding board that is not my spouse or the other few people that I've chatted about, and someone who's in the industry and has done this many times before.
For sure. I mean, I feel like we need to get better at this for everything. Uh, I mean, professions and life, and I mean, I know there are people out there with job titles like life coach and so on, but I mean, even in just taking programming as something, like I know a lot of people have tried to do this, people I know because they were teachers as well.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, instead of being a teacher, I'm going to be a coach. I'm going to go into a company, have the company pay my salary, and then I will like walk around and coach people, whatever. And I don't know, it's been hard to find a model for that works, I guess. I don't know if it's just that. Well, tell me, for this writing coach, without like embarrassing yourself, is this a decadent, indulgent thing? Do a lot of people have writing coaches?
I don't know, but I think there a lot of people read writing books, and I've just read every book from every author. Invariably, if you're a successful bestseller author, you publish a book like Stephen King's
About
On
writing.
Writing, yeah, which are great, and they're like half biography, half a bunch of tips. And me as a neophyte cub writer is like, oh, I need to do X, Y, and Z, and blah blah blah. So I've done a bunch of that. I don't know how many people do this. One thing I've read is, as a writer, money is supposed to flow towards you, and if it starts flowing away from you, I've heard that's wrong. So maybe it's like you're paying someone to be an editor, you're paying someone to look at your book. So I'm now there's outflow happening, and there hasn't been any inflow in any of my writing careers. Although some of my blog posts, there's a disclaimer at the bottom, link out to Amazon affiliate links. I think I've made about $1.13 over the last 5 years or something. So that's a little bit of inflow, but mostly now I'm starting to do outflow. And I think I'm okay with it. I think this is going to help. I think having someone who is an expert, or even if someone, it's almost like
Coaching is great. Yeah, coaching is great. I was just kind of curious what the dynamics like in writing compared to programming, because in programming, I wonder if people's like comp for being a software engineer is too high to like really enable a sustainable kind of practice of tutoring. Whereas like we spoke about the series of articles on aristocratic tutoring, right? Maybe that was even the first
Yes.
podcast episode.
So yeah, the Two Sigma, and then there was that Substack post, which I read.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was very clear to me from those articles that these people were tutors for the wealthy because that is how they made money.
Yeah.
And their alternative of just doing independent research wasn't very well remunerated. I mean, who would have been paying them? And so basically, they did the tutoring as a way to fund their research. And that's not really something that's happening in programming, computer science. And because like you could go to Google or whatever and get a decent salary, it doesn't really occur to you to be like a tutor for those people who have the salaries. Like there isn't that kind of wealth disparity, I guess.
Yeah, which is it a worse outcome for those people who would have been the tutors because they're now slurped into corporate, the tax of being in the corporate machine? Or it's obviously a worse outcome for the people who are not being tutored by the greats. So like the young neophyte programmers are not getting the Aristotle computer science folks like helping them.
Yeah.
Obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to consider what version of this is happening in our industry, broadly considered, because we don't have programming tutors really, other than a handful. But we do have lecturers in computer science departments who can teach to an auditorium, and they get paid really for that, and then they get to do some research as well. Yeah. And so that is happening. But not programming per se, I guess, because these people's interest is not really programming. Like their interest is computer science, and so you kind of get the package deal.
Well, I loved Omar when we were chatting with him, and when he finished up at the coding bootcamp, he paid his teacher to be a tutor on a go forward basis.
Yeah, Jesse Farmer actually, he after listening to that episode, he actually let me know that was not an uncommon thing at all, and that really? Actually, at least when he was at Dev Bootcamp, it was very common for students to reach out to instructors, like a good proportion of them afterwards, which is great.
Yeah. What does the tutor learn something that maybe more people should think about as you're learning, as you're a mid-level software engineer? Should you try to tutor? Is there something you learn from teaching? Because I've often heard that phrase, if you can't explain it to an X-year-old, you don't really know the concept. Should that be something more people do?
I'm not sure. It can be a forcing function, but I mean, consider sports coaching. Like, would you really look at I don't know, Pete Sampras or someone. I don't know why I thought of Pete Sampras. That's how old I am. But like someone who never became a coach, but who was a phenomenal player. And you're like, oh, you don't really understand tennis until you can teach a 12-year-old how to hit a backhand. It's like, no,
Yeah.
clearly you've reached in this pursuit where it's very easy to measure success. You are the number one in the world. And that's despite never having done any coaching before.
Yeah.
So it's probably not the case. And probably people are deluding themselves when they say that there's this critical part of understanding that comes from being able to articulate in a way that's appropriate for teaching. I think that's a different thing. And really being a good teacher is not about summarizing and articulating. It is about kind of forming a theory of mind and helping the individual understand, particularly in the context of tutoring, helping the individual navigate their misunderstanding in a way that they wouldn't have even brought up. This is why I think it's ridiculous that people think of ChatGPT as a tutor. It's like way, way off from what good tutoring is. It's almost like you don't know what tutoring is if you think that ChatGPT can be a tutor.
Is this because ChatGPT is not asking you questions and you're prompting?
Yes.
Okay.
Essentially it's that. It's instruction. It's like it's tuned to follow your instructions. And that is almost the opposite of what a good tutor is. So it's not like when it's giving you an explanation, that's not helping you learn beyond the like face value of the explanation. Whereas the good tutor is really asking you probing questions to figure out your misunderstanding and redirect you in a really foundational way.
But is there not some prompt architecture you could set up to teach the LLM to probe you in that way? And like, instead of slow reveal, just slow reveal via questions? Could you not?
I have personally not been able to get it to do that through just prompting. And by it, I'm talking about like GPT-4 via the ChatGPT interface.
Okay.
But I know that Khan Academy has.
Oh yeah.
I haven't been able to try it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they have. I think they said that they got early access and spent something like 6 months on a combination of fine tuning and prompt engineering, and that apparently they've made some progress there. But as it stands, like off the shelf GPT, no, it's answering your questions. It's not doing what a tutor would do.
Okay. And has Khan said anything else other than this tool is there? Like, I still feel like the magic of Khan is this sort of scaffolding, and like these are the paths that you need to go down, and these are like the antecedent concepts that you need to understand. Have they talked about the pedagogy of having this little tutor alongside them at all?
Not really that I've seen. I mean, only at a kind of promotional level, but we'll see. It's very early days. I mean, I don't think in principle a large language model couldn't do this, but at the moment with instruct tuning, it's not really set up for that.
Okay, so it makes sense that I'm paying a human being to be my writing tutor right now.
Yeah, I think I mean obviously there are practical considerations like you've got a fixed amount of time with this person, and there might not be the right time and that kind of thing. But otherwise, yeah, humans. I mean, obviously I'm biased being a human myself, but
sometimes I'm not so sure when you tell me you have not watched Succession or are not currently thinking about it right now.
Absolutely not. Yeah, absolutely not.
What are your entertainment vices, if you have any?
I don't think I'm really on the like. I think when I was younger, I really did fall into this kind of feedback loop. You know how people talk about like I used to smoke, I used to drink, whatever. I mean, I did those too. Actually, I did smoke for a while. For instance, it feels weird to even consider that, but yeah, playing computer games. I think that to do that look, if you're really young, whatever, everything's a game. As you get older, you find games in other things. But I think if I see a 20-year-old who's playing a computer game, and they're not really earnestly like understanding what it is that they're doing, what they're committing their life to there. And when I say playing, I don't mean like a few hours here or there. I mean like 4-6 hours a day of playing a computer game. Like that is a derailment of the individual, in my opinion, that is not dissimilar to.
Even if they're playing Silicon Zeros?
Silicon Zeros is study. I will not hear a bad word said about Silicon Zeros. Silicon Zeros is fantastic. I think when people talk about gamifying education,
Yeah.
this is the only version of it that I'm not saying game Silicon Zero specifically, but I mean, like, if you uh if you have a situation like this where you have a miraculous coincidence of learning the things that you want to learn through an actually entertaining feedback loop, that's fantastic. But I just think that the feedback loop is usually perverted. Like, it is usually constructed in a way to hook a person onto something that is not their goals.
Yeah.
And I mean, very few people will honestly say, "Hey, my goal in life is to be entertained." And maybe they're going to say, not be a burden on the rest of society, but be entertained by spare time, or whatever. Like, no one's really honestly like that. If they are, then so be it. But if someone comes to me and is like, "Oh, my goal is to be a productive programmer, to like create more for the world than I take away through writing software or whatever, to have more fun even in my day job or in my practice of being a software engineer." Like, these are goals that are not really um uh they can't really sit alongside playing computer games for 4 or 6 hours a day.
Yeah.
But they can with playing Silicon Zeros.
Yeah.
I mean, Silicon Zeros you can play for like 30 hours or something, and you've done all of the extra goals, and you've learned about modern CPU
Yeah.
architectures actually to a reasonable degree.
I feel like you have a list of Oz approved video game titles.
Yeah, it'd be a pretty short list.
Silicon Zeros and the
Well,
manufacturing.
my wife played Human Resource Machine,
Yeah,
which Human Resource Machine is an assembly programming game in essence. And she's not a programmer, and she started playing it, and she finished it. And at the end, I was like, "Wow, you can code assembly now." She's like implementing merge sort and assembly and stuff. Like, how many actual software engineers could do that? And she's like, no, I just did this game with this like specific set of rules about how these commands, one would logically follow another, and then you get this outcome. That's all I did. I'm like, that is programming. You are a programmer.
See, so this can work. So I guess my last question here is, like, you haven't thought about pulling these game mechanics out or anything like that? They are so good at keeping you in this flow state. Wouldn't it be great if your students were like trapped in a flow state of learning / consumption, et cetera? Is that possible to pull that into what you're doing, or you don't see that as a source of inspiration?
I'm not sure if that can be done. I haven't seen that done intentionally.
Okay.
Because, well, look at it this way: the games that I really like, those are, well, I don't know about Human Resource Machine, but Silicon Zeros. Talking to Nicholas about it, it was absolutely not an educational thing that he was trying to do. He was just trying to make a fun game.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And I forget the Zachtronics guy. I mean, to me, he's just Zachtronics, but he's got a real name, Zach something.
Presumably Zach. Yeah.
Mr. Tronics. He has said exactly the same thing. I subsequently found in a talk where he was like, "Oh no, I absolutely was not trying to make this educational." Which is hilarious because you really are. I mean, his games are different, but something like Shenzhen IO, you're doing like a little bit of hardware, a bit of assembly programming. It's not an easy game, and you're basically developing the skill set of someone who's a highly sought after engineer. And he's like, "No, not educational. It's just pure fun." And so I think like they made these pure fun games that just happen to have an educational outcome. I don't know what it would have looked like if they were like, "Let's make this thing gamified. Let's make this,"
let's make this thing education, and then maybe they wouldn't have been fun.
Yeah, I mean, to me, what I do take on board is this idea that if you can set up a good feedback loop, like a satisfying feedback loop, then you will stick to something and have your skills grow. And it's just like the Csikszentmihalyi flow state thing. It means that if I pick a sequence of exercises, firstly, I'm picking a sequence of exercises. I'm not lecturing at you for 2 hours. Well, I can do that too. But if I'm trying to help someone actually learn rather than indulging my interest in lecturing, then I'm picking a sequence of exercises. And then I'm trying to pick the exercises so that they get a little bit harder. They're not too hard. Ideally, at the beginning, you're not frustrated. They're not too easy. You're not bored. It's just the classic flow thing. But gamifying it in the way that people talk about gamifying, with like you get badges and jewels and whatever points, I don't know.
Or there's the young ladies illustrated primer thing where there's narrative constructed around you and you're learning stuff. I feel like there is potential for this, but we maybe, like you said, we haven't seen this yet. And this is not explicitly what you're not pulling this as a source of inspiration.
I think it's not. There's potentially some value there, but it's not personally my skill set and not the most direct way to solve the problem that I'm trying to solve. And so maybe one day.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to go play Zelda now, but I might go watch the rest of Succession. And I hope that this podcast continues to not be a source of stress to think that you're creating evil, because I do think there is merit in having these discussions, because there are questions that people have about this stuff. Most of the value I'm getting out of this is me feeling guilty about something and then asking Oz, is it okay if I go finish this episode of Succession?
Well, look, I'm not saying entertainment is bad, and I don't like. Look, if you're frank about this being the kind of entertainment that you want listening to this podcast, then that's great. It's better than playing Zelda, I got to tell you.
Yeah.
It's better than the other podcasts. But I don't want people to feel like this is a good substitute for actually doing their work, doing their study, following their interests.
Yeah.
So there's that. I think if you're very clear about why it is that you're doing these things, then that's great. And then there are other aspects. Like to me, the most comparable thing I think is reading Paul Graham's essays when I was in school. Okay. And when I say I was in school with a lot of people who are very career oriented in not Silicon Valley, in Sydney, Australia. Mm-hmm. And to me, like, I had no connection to that world at all. And reading those essays, it was a kind of it was a dislocating, like a literally dislocating experience where I got to imagine myself there, see what it was like to be doing that kind of work, and make it feel reasonable that I would set a path to that, even though everyone around me was not like that. And so I think a good podcast could be like that, where you were born where you were born. You're surrounded by the people you're surrounded by, and to think, well, I could have a glimpse into another way of being and make progress towards that could be good. But if it's a substitute for actually doing that, then that's bad. It needs to be a tool towards doing that, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I haven't figured out how to do coding while I'm doing the dishes, so I think there is a place for a show like this.
Yeah, but I mean, it takes your mental cycles as well, right? Like, you're not going to do coding while you're doing the dishes, but like, you could be thinking about the problem that's important to you.
That's true. Yeah, the terror of not having your ear pods in your ear and thinking your own thoughts. I think I've lost that, I'm very guilty of that. So I think
I'm not saying go as far as thinking your own thoughts, but if you've got a little problem, a programming problem,
okay, all right, I'll do that.
With, then that's another thing.
Okay, I'm gonna go do that. Well, I'll report back next time we chat.
All right, I'm not gonna ask you about Succession.
No spoilers here. No spoilers. Not that you care. All right, later. See ya.